The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Today is Thursday, February 23rd, 2023. Thank you so much for joining me. I need to begin in Gulfport, Mississippi, where a secret grand jury was convened by investigators in the state of Mississippi regarding the murder of 15-year-old Jaheim McMillan. And that grand jury, to no shock to anyone who has been paying attention to police violence and police murder of black people in this country, they did not indict the police officer who pulled the trigger. And as far as the state prosecutor's office is concerned, they say they are now done with this case. They released body cam footage, highly edited body cam footage, and I can discuss it here with you, but I would recommend you going to the Mississippi Free Press. I'll throw a link in the description for you to go and watch the video, the body cam. Now, in the video and the body cam, they made painstaking efforts to show you that he had something in his hand, something that looked like a gun in his hands, as he ran away from police officers. That part doesn't seem to matter in America, especially if you're black. Right? Running away from police officers is a threat to police officers. You remember Walter Scott shot 5 times in the back as he ran away. In this case, the officer who pulled the trigger, you could finally see he had less than 5 seconds to ascertain what was going on before he unloaded on Jaheim. Now, here's the most important thing about it. The first officer to encounter Jaheim with whatever that was in his hands, the first officer who saw Jaheim with the very same thing he had in his hands that the grand jury is saying is reason enough for them not to indict this officer. The other officer who did not kill him saw the same thing in his hands that the officer who killed him saw. So why is it that the first officer who encountered Jaheim McMillan, again, go to the Mississippi Free Press to see the video. The first officer who encountered Jaheim McMillan did not pull the trigger. But it was the second officer who jumped out and in less than 5 seconds unloaded his clip. You could hear it in the video. You could see the smoke popping off the glass in front of the Family Dollar store there in Gulfport. The grand jury decided not to indict. I have to admit, this is probably one of the most efficient executions of getting away with murder that I have personally been privy to. I can tell you from talking with the police right there in Gulfport that they are masters at this game. And when you consider the history of the city of Gulfport, the number of black people who have either turned up dead or turned up missing, you would not be surprised at how efficiently they executed exonerating this police officer. So as it stands right now, there appears to be no justice for Jaheim, 15-year-old Jaheim McMillan, who was killed in front of a Family Dollar store as he ran away from police officers. The grand jury has cleared this police officer in the killing. I have been in touch with organizers there in Mississippi, and I'm listening to them as they are deciding what their next move is going to be. But I believe it has to be holistic. I believe at this point, we have to address this thing at a systemic level in the state of Mississippi. We could certainly do it in every other state because it's not as though police aren't killing us in every other state, but there's something particularly nefarious about what's going on in Mississippi. The hubris, because you have to take into consideration now, if there's a state that has gotten away with so much blood on its hands. I mean, remember Emmett Till was 15 and he was killed in that state when he came down one summer from Chicago. Mississippi knows how to get away with murder. And they know how to get away with murdering black people specifically. So as the organizers in the state prepare to move forward, as I'm listening to them and hearing from the family is in terms of how they wish to proceed. I just want to put it on the record that I saw firsthand how efficiently they executed this exoneration, how they moved expeditiously and refused to interview any of the eyewitnesses on the scene. The eyewitnesses who yelled at the top of their lungs. I think I have a video. I can go find a clip for you and play it. There's a video of a white man in particular, and I bring him up specifically because he is a white Southern man in Gulfport, Mississippi, who was an eyewitness to the murder, and he was the most vocal about calling out the police murderer for his cold-blooded execution of Jaheim McMillan. It's not every day you get a white guy who's going to be on your side against the cops, especially not a Southerner conservative in the state of Mississippi. Looked like he had on a Blue Lives Matter shirt. Now, I'm going to drop that link, that particular video. I'll put that in the description because you need to read the subtitles. You can hear it. You can certainly hear it, but it's definitely difficult to hear because of all the sounds of the fire department coming in and all of the witnesses who were upset and screaming at the top of their lungs. You can hear it, but it's going to be very difficult. I will also put the link in the description so that you can go and read the subtitles for yourself. But I just want you to hear the anger in this man's voice after he saw what the police did to that young 15-year-old black boy, Jaheim McMillan.
That's my boy, Fred. No, that's you fucking piece of shit! Yeah, that's my boy. I got y'all, B. You're a fucking piece of shit. That's a friend. That's a motherfucking. That's a motherfucking piece of shit. I'm passing by. I see this. Y'all got to knock him off. That young man is going to run this way. I ain't got no time to be no more. I tell my son that they don't really get a time.
Now, again, it was difficult to hear, but I will put the link in the description and you can read the subtitles for yourself. That's the energy that happened. That's what happened immediately in the aftermath. But yet and still, the city of Gulfport, Mississippi and the state of Mississippi has found no cause to indict the officer involved in this shooting. Officer Kenneth Nassar is the cop who killed 15-year-old Jaheim McMillan. Yesterday, we covered the story of East Palestine, Ohio, where the residents are still reeling in the aftermath of the toxic chemical spill that occurred because of the train derailment from Norfolk Southern, the train company that was one of the many train companies that lobbied the Trump administration to do away with the regulations, the enhanced braking systems that would have prevented this derailment that East Palestine is now recovering from. And the irony of Donald Trump showing up yesterday and tossing out his Colt 45 hats and Make America Great Again hats and distributing Trump water, which some are speculating whether or not it was expired water. But I digress. The irony of Trump showing up to make this public appearance, this campaign stop, is that he is responsible for the pain that's happening to those people in that city. Now, we discussed this yesterday, the irony of it, but here's the strange thing that's happening now because Fox News has committed to opposing Donald Trump, to ditching Donald Trump, and they have hitched their wagons to DeSantis. One of the very best presentations of this information about the rollback of the regulations that could have prevented this disaster actually came from Fox News. Can you imagine that? Take a listen in.
The White House.
Right. Speaking of the White House, apparently regulations regarding train safety were changed during the Trump administration. This particular railroad and others lobbied President Trump to dismantle an Obama-era rule that would have required railroads to update their braking systems. And apparently the Obama administration had pushed for it to govern transportation of hazardous materials after about 500,000 barrels of crude were dumped. But ultimately, the Trump administration undid that and said the costs exceeded the benefits.
That was Fox News. Now, I'm sure we'll hear more of this information from other media outlets. MSNBC is probably all over it by now, but this was Fox News early this morning reporting the facts. Factually, truthfully, in the face of Donald Trump. Now, let's not mistake this as a turning point for Fox News, except for one thing. They're turning away from Donald Trump and to Ron DeSantis. So they can't allow, they saw the political efficacy of what Trump did yesterday, right? Donald Trump knows how to milk a disaster. And he did a great job showing up. Pete Buttigieg showed up today. He was a day late. I'll still play the clip from him. President Biden is still, if I'm not mistaken, I believe he's still doing his tour of Europe and all of the various stops that he had to make there. But yesterday was a brilliant move by Donald Trump. Even anything that can stroke his ego, he does well at. And so Fox News was wildly aware of this, such that by the time this morning came around, they had made a decision, an executive decision to just, you know what? Let's just tell the truth. What's great about this is that simply telling the truth is enough to destroy conservatism. I mean, at the end of the day, that's the moral of the story. If people would just tell the truth about conservatives and conservatism, then they will it fails. It completely falls apart. It simply falls apart. Fox News is playing a game here. They are not turning away from their propagandistic ways. They are most certainly trying to make sure that Donald Trump does not receive any of the benefits from his political stunt yesterday. And you know what? When you have two different groups of people fighting, two groups of monsters fighting, you saw the movie Godzilla, or at least you've seen the meme. What do? You sit back and let them fight. I think this is going to be a great campaign season. Let's take a listen to Pete Buttigieg, who's a day late, dollar short. However, he's never a dollar short on how to spin a phrase in order to make a point. Here he is saying what Donald Trump could do to help out, since he's partly responsible.
One thing he could do is express support for reversing the deregulation that happened on his watch. I heard him say he had nothing to do with it, even though it was in his administration. So if he had nothing to do with it and they did it in his administration against his will, maybe he could come out and say that he supports us moving in a different direction. We're not afraid to own our policies when it comes to raising the bar on regulation. And I've got to think that him indicating that this is something that everybody, no matter how much you disagree on politics and presidential campaigns, can get behind. Higher fines, tougher regulations on safety, Congress untying our hands on braking rules, all the other things that go with that. That'd be a nice thing for him to do.
Again, so that's Pete Buttigieg, who showed up to East Palestine, Ohio, in the aftermath of everything that's happening there in that city. This is the intersection of so many of the absurdities that occur in this country on a regular basis. Our American politics, they are absurd by almost design. But to see a city, a group of people from that city, because of course they're not all Trump supporters, but those who showed up to his rally yesterday and they were all throwing hats and, lovely getting the water. And the absurdity of it is that he's responsible. Yet and still, sometimes Democrats sleeping at the wheel don't get to an issue soon enough to actually make that case. And so now, if it was not for Fox News, do you see how wild this particular story is? Right? Because the Democrats aren't doing the job of exposing the truth about what actually happened. Not at that level. They're busy doing everything else that's going on. I get it. You know, Joe Biden was in Ukraine, or he was in Europe, Warsaw, yesterday specifically. I get that. Pete Buttigieg should have got there sooner. But that's not the point. The point is this: how crazy American politics is that while the truth is on the side of the Democrats, and while Donald Trump is being heralded as the people's president because he threw out hats in water, it took Fox News to break this particular cycle. And it's not because Fox News wanted to do something good or noble. It's because, well, they just chosen somebody else besides Trump. Ron DeSantis, who we'll talk about next. We'll be right back. Ron DeSantis is trying to stick by this claim that he has not caused the banning of books. Now, anyone who is in the state of Florida or anyone who's been paying attention knows very well that there are specific lists of books that have been removed. Some schools have, in fact, removed their entire library. That's the video that we saw that went super viral on Twitter. And this is the specific video that Ron DeSantis is trying to say was hoaxed or a fake. I wonder if he's now feeling the pressure of what it is to actually be a fascist in a, he's a proto-fascist in a declining liberal democratic state, right? He's on the transition. He's on the cusp. He's on the inflection point. He is the first fascist out the gate, so to speak, right? Trump was Trump, but DeSantis is a calculating fascist. And he thought a little too highly, this being DeSantis, thought a little too highly of his ability to get away with it. He thought simply because he could do these things in the state of Florida, the Stop Woke Act, the Don't Say Gay bill, he thought since he could do them and he can execute it efficiently, that he would be able to get away with it. Little did he know that the people of Florida are a force to be reckoned with. They have been giving him hell. And this is perhaps one of the first times I've seen him twice, actually, on the same issue. This is the first issue that I have seen him now twice try to not backtrack, but to say he didn't really do it. Listen in.
But they've tried to create in Florida a narrative. It's basically a book ban hoax. It's a hoax what they're doing. And they're trying to say that because we have parental rights and because we have curriculum transparency, if you have a book that has hardcore pornography in a library that 10-year-olds can access, a parent objects to that, that does not satisfy Florida standards. It should not be in the library with those young kids. And I think 99% of parents agree with that. What you will see, and you had a person in Jacksonville say, take a picture of blank bookshelf, say, the state doesn't want any books in the library, and then it ends up going. And then you have lefty media that do it, and then they try to create a narrative. They've also said, you just had on MSNBC, you had the reporter saying that Governor DeSantis does not want students to learn about slavery and its aftermath. Well, if you actually looked at what our standards are, not only is it not prohibited to teach that, it's required to teach that. It's required to teach all of those things.
See, this is him trying to backpedal, to soften the impact of what he actually did. The impact of what he actually did actually caused books to be pulled off of shelves. The video that we're talking about, I've mentioned it several times. If you have not seen it, it is a book from Mandarin Middle School in Jacksonville, Florida. And the entire fiction section was removed from its library. That's the video of the father who on Twitter, he was like, you guys think this is a hoax? That I think was the caption, if I remember correctly. And he filmed it and he showed it. But because parents, like, if there's one thing that an average participant in politics understands, is that when people start banning books, fascism isn't coming, fascism is here. And Ron DeSantis thought because he could play these little games and use these culture war wedge issues as a way to distract from what he's actually doing in the state of Florida, He thought simply because he could use it and he was good at it and he thought he could get away with it without any ramifications, without any pushback from all of the, I mean, this is Florida. These people are wild. Floridians, you don't, listen, I feel like he's under pressure here. The real question is what is the state of Florida going to do to turn this around and to stop him? Because he was just reelected. And it's not as though most of what we see him doing now wasn't present before. It's just he knew the timing. He knew he needed to wait to his second term to actually enact some of these policies, as wild as they are. Because can you imagine if these things had been done before his second term election? So he is a smart executioner of fascism. The fact of the matter is, though, is that enough people are already queued up to understand the level of fascism that is coming from the Republican Party in this country, such that they're prepared. When they started, and I hate that it took this long, right? There have been plenty of people who have been warning about Ron DeSantis for a while now. I'm one of them, but there's some who have been warning longer than me. It took the banning of books to get this state, the state of Florida, to that point. But now the state of Florida has to endure at a minimum 2 more years of this guy to 2012. We're still at the beginning of 2023. So 2 more years of this guy. And God, hopefully you all are stuck with him for 4 more years, because the last thing we need to happen is for that monster to become president of the United States.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and get twice the content and unfiltered interviews without any of the commercial interruptions.
And here we go. Very special welcome to Michael Curran. Thank you so much for becoming our latest patron. This patron party is for you. Everybody turn up. That's right. Wait a minute. You too can become a part of this prestigious and prodigious patron family by going to patreon.com/The BPD Show, where you get twice the content, none of the commercial interruptions, and you get access to our bi-weekly patron party, which we have one coming up this Friday night. Patreon.com/The BPD Show, and we'll be back right after these commercial breaks. Unless you're a patron, which you don't have any commercials.
Welcome back to the Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at thebenjamindixonshow.com.
Yep. Welcome back. You all know I am on the church beat. I organize with churches in my spare time. I have worked in churches for a good portion of my life before going to corporate America and coming to media, et cetera, et cetera. I have been following Christian nationalism for some time in this country. One last story before we go to the patrons only portion. I want to point out what's happening to a church in Georgia that has been ousted from the Southern Baptist Convention for having a woman pastor. There were 4 churches that were ousted from the Southern Baptist Convention as of late because they had women as their leaders. Now, this particular church in the state of Georgia actually did not have any affiliation with the Southern Baptist Church, which is kind of hilarious. How do you oust someone who isn't even affiliated with you? I mean, they are really serious about not having women preachers. But they don't seem to have that kind of level of intensity or concern when it comes to the amount of sexual abuse, child abuse, molestation, sexual assault that take place in the Southern Baptist churches. Some 900 cases that have been amassed into a massive report showing the depth of how much the commitment that the Southern Baptist Church had to protecting these pastors and these church leaders who committed these heinous acts. I don't see a single one of those churches being put out. But if you had a woman pastor, then they have to put you out. I know for most people who listen, who may not go to church, it's like that particular nuance may not matter to you, but I'm sure the hypocrisy is quite not shocking, but just another example of how there is no morality. There is no consistency. There's nothing but hypocrisy from conservative Christians in this country. You mean to tell me it is more offensive to the Southern Baptist Church that a church is headed up by a woman than it is for a pastor or deacon or choir leader or a trustee or whoever has the opportunity? They're saying women pastors are more offensive than these pedophiles, than these preachers who are out here diddling little kids, than these preachers who are out here raping women in their offices. In fact, these churches and these organizations, they actively help suppress and protect these pastors, suppress the information and to protect the pastors. I'm not shocked because I have been in church most of my life. And I've never been around a church that had this going on. And I can tell you that much in terms of my personal experience. But I've seen enough foolishness in church to understand that level of hypocrisy, the level of misogyny. It is so staggering. There are plenty of black churches right now who still will refuse to let women preach in their churches, right? So it's not just a Southern Baptist thing, but when the Southern Baptist Church has right now, in the last 12 months, has been underneath one of the largest investigations that is a sinful crying shame, that if Jesus was to come back like this week, everyone in the Southern Baptist Church who participated in this and helped cover it up would be going to hell. But the only thing they stood up to stand against was the election of multiple women as pastors of churches. Well, some of the best preachers I know are women. Some of the best pastors I know are women. Some of the most effective communicators and fighters for justice and liberation are women. And there's a good, let me stop myself and say this very clearly and correctly. Had the women been pastors all of these years, you would not have had the 900 cases of sexual abuse that came from the Southern Baptist Church alone. We haven't even talked about the Catholic Church. We haven't talked about the Mormon Church. But if women had been leading these churches all alone, no way in God's green earth you would have had all of this uncontrolled, unchecked abuse, molestation, rape that's coming from religious leaders. You know why? Because most religious leaders are men. And I have yet to tell you guys my opinion about men. Don't get me wrong. I love being a man. I just know what our problems. I know who we are. I know what we are. I know how problematic we are. And I know that when you give a man power and that man has no control over himself, has no self-control, has no respect for any other human being, has no respect for anyone else but his own sexual desires. When a man prioritizes his penis, there's no limit to the bodies he will destroy, the lives that he will destroy, the families that he will destroy when a man doesn't have his penis in check. So yeah, no, 1,000%, I want to say it again. Had these churches been led by women, there's no way in hell the sexual assault that we see coming from the Southern Baptist Church would have ever existed. So perhaps the move to make is to remove the pastors that are men and put in some women. Or maybe even some non-gender conforming individuals. How about that? Patrons, I don't even know what time. Oh, wow. We're right at the moment. Here it is. It's coming up at 30 minutes. Patrons, stay tuned. Everyone else, get access to this. Patreon.com/the BPD show. One quick update. We are still in the process of reformatting the show. We have not settled on the final schedule, but once we make this final transition, we are going to lock into a schedule that we are going to commit to, and I want you to be there. So stick around. Patreon.com/the BPD show. Everyone else, I'll see you next time.